Hey everyone, I'm Tim.
And I'm the only Luddite in the OSINT world, Chris.
And welcome to the OSINT Output. So we started this because we had a lot of interest from people who wanted to know just in general about OSINT techniques, tradecraft, and some trends. So we're going to try to set it up where we have some, initial stuff that we've been tracking for a while, and then going into kind of things that we've known for a very long time about OSINT that people just want to track. Whether that's, hey, what's the best computer I use? What's the best VPN if you're concerned about, your privacy, virtual machines, like resources that we're tracking. So we're going to hopefully hit that on a bunch of episodes going forward. So again, if you want to hear anything about that, feel free to hit that follow button.
So the purpose of this whole thing is we're both certified OSINT instructors. It's something we teach, it's something we do, and it's something we practice. And we just want to share that with people who want to learn about OSINT, what they want to do, what they want to accomplish. Tim is by far the more technically intricate guy, whereas I'm probably the only Luddite in the OSINT world where I hate technology, but I brute force my way through it, and I just figure things out as I go along.
Oh, taking a drink and he made me laugh when he said that. It's actually kind of true. This guy more than once has told me if I'm traveling anywhere, probably more than 50 miles away from the house, make sure you have $200 in travel month. And I'm like, dude, debit cards, credit cards are accepted everywhere.
I don't trust that shit.
So it's fascinating when we get to talk about that stuff. But anyways, since Chris kind of started introducing me there, I've been doing OSINT now, informally since 2013 when I was deployed to Afghanistan supporting a customer out there. And while I was out there, one thing that I found really fascinating was just mapping software. Actually, Chris by trade, will get into a little later, is a GUID analyst. So that's one thing I really love as well. And I found out about this resource called Wikimapia. And while I was on
Oh, I showed him that.
there was a compound that I needed to track. And when I clicked on it on Wikimapia, it was a person who was talking mad crap about their neighbor.
He means terrorist.
And then when I clicked on it on the house next to him, they were talking mad crap about the other one. And this is all in Pashto, by the way, because I'm in Afghanistan. And that's when I found out about their true names, where they traveled. So at that point, I realized how valuable open source information is.
Be a good neighbor if you're going to be a terrorist.
And then later on, I actually got into open source intelligence after a few more deployments where I was formally trained for the U.S. government, which we both support and we're in, because I was in the Army for almost 15 years, active duty, reservist, National Guardsman, and I got out. But after we got an open source, you have to be formally trained for the government. So we had to go through some courses, and that's when I got my first entry into understanding what OSINT actually is, understanding our attribution, why we have to use certain technologies, certain computer systems, networks, right? So it doesn't link back to who we are, who we support. And then after that, I kind of became an instructor, and now I'm currently the training lead for CACI for the Dark Blue Intelligence Suite. So that's where I'm currently at as of today, offering courses to a bunch of people, service members, contractors, private citizens. So now, Chris, I've been hogging the mic for too long. It's Chris's turn.
So I got into OSINT on my own, and I did it the wrong way because someone cashed a check in my name. And the shittiest part about it is they didn't even spell my name right. So I just started diving into this because I wanted to figure out, who cashed the check, where they cashed it, and to see if I could stop it or prevent it. And, really I wanted this person to get arrested. So I found out from the bank where my check was cashed. So I hopped on the internets. I, looked up this company. It was just like a check. It was like a hardware store type place where they had a check cashing component. So I dove into this check cashing component, figured out some of their frequent customers because, they posted reviews and stuff online. So then I went to Facebook and I went through their profiles and stuff. And eventually I found the people that had, cashed these checks in my name. So I gathered all this evidence. I reported it to the authorities, and they just went, "No, we're not doing anything with that." Which, is whatever. But the process there is, a similar process that I think every OSINT analyst in the modern day uses is, you start with a lead, you pivot to other things, and then you just kind of, fumble your way into whatever answer you're looking for. Some of it is more targeted, more pinpoint, and the more you learn about OSINT, the more you learn about the technology and the tools available, the better at it you'll be. But the big thing into being an OSINT person, if you want to eventually call yourself that, or you already call yourself that, is just being curious and never accepting one thing for another and just driving forwards and keep pushing.
It's funny whenever someone says the word pivot, it's a very common term in OSINT because OSINT in general, there's no one overarching database. And for your other intelligence disciplines, right, when you think about human intelligence, signals intelligence, geospatial intelligence, there's usually a database you can go to that's concatenated, everything's there for you to look at. But with OSINT, there's no formal database for you.
It's the internet. The internet's the database.
But anything else you can go do, like you're talking about libraries, you're talking about universities, people that you go out, like, as long as it doesn't require you to break a law, international or federally, wherever you're located at, technically that's OSINT. And it's mostly passive in nature.
I did get that $40 back, by the way.
It's definitely one of the more intelligence disciplines that require you to be creative. It's a very large community, by the way, which kind of brings us into what we want to talk about going forward, because we're trying to structure these so that we talk about things that are currently trending, either in news, social media, that's went viral. But one of the things I discovered this week, what I discovered, I just popped up on my newsfeed. Like I'm a big Reddit troller.
Reddit is golden for OSINT, by the way.
Doom trolling Reddit is the best. And one thing that popped up on my feed this week was, number one, right, the inauguration for U.S. President Trump came into office. And as a result of that, he started signing multiple executive orders.
This is now the news portion of the podcast.
The news portion. He signed a bunch of executive orders and also issued a bunch of pardons. One among those, 1,600 among those, was anybody involved in the January 6th protests a few years ago.
Which OSINT did a great job at getting a bunch of those dudes arrested.
That was actually insane. Yeah, like they would, from the news itself, and then people posting photos, and also like it was FBI, DHS, the Capitol Police too. They were posting photos of these individuals, their mugshots, and saying, if anybody can help identify these people, please let us know.
If you guys want, we can do a future episode on just the OSINT work that went into getting those guys arrested who are now pardoned.
It was a crowdsourced effort. Oh, so that was one of the many pardons that he had, but one of the ones that I've really focused on, because I focus on a lot of dark web exploitation right now, is the fact that Ross Ulbricht was pardoned, which is the way that it was done.
Silk Road.
Yeah. The way that was kind of done was weird, because it wasn't just it wasn't clemency, right? It wasn't like, commuting a sentence. Pardon him for all of his actions, right? So going all the way back to when he was tried and arrested, he's been pardoned for all those crimes. And he actually released a video talking about his
pardon, what it meant to him, and how he's an upstanding member of, and, whatever your feelings are on this dude, left or right. That's a military term. I mean, the guy operated one of the largest drug trades, and that is incredible.
Yeah, so we actually have the video pulled up right now.
And not just drugs, but there were weapons, there were human trafficking, all that stuff went through the Silk Road.
Yeah, and Ross Ulbricht is a pacifist, right? He actually put on the website when he ran Silk Road, and this was before my time as an OSINT analyst, when 2011, when Silk Road first came online, was my first deployment in the military, where I had no clue what OSINT was. I was just doing, all source intelligence and analysis for the Army.
Yeah. So Tim's going to play you a clip of the video, and then we'll talk about some of the other stuff that could exist because of this pardon.
Donald Trump granted me a full pardon. I was doing life without parole, and I was locked up for more than 11 years. But he let me out. I'm a free man now.
All right. So what Tim was actually talking to me just before we started recording this is what that means for his Bitcoin. Because, like I said, Tim's a more tech guy, and like the e-commerce and the blockchain stuff is all this guy. So he's going to tell you a little bit about that.
But one of the things that really strikes me is that I don't know how many wallets were recovered when they seized his computer, because during the initial operation, when they captured Ross Ulbricht, also known as Dread Pirate Roberts, before that, I think it was Super Boss Admin on Silk Road. If you don't know what Dread Pirate Roberts is, you need to do yourself a favor and go watch The Princess Bride.
Fantastic film.
You will be doing yourself a disservice if you don't go do that. But anyways, when he was captured, they made sure that he was logged into his computer. It was unlocked, right, because he had encryption on it. I think it was a Vericrypt and if they didn't capture him with him logged in the Silk Road, there was no way they could actually start exploiting all the content that was on his computer. And as a result of that, they probably had access to a lot of his private keys and wallets that were on there, but maybe he didn't store all of those on there. And if y'all aren't tracking, when it comes to cryptocurrency, in order to generate a wallet for almost any software, it usually gives you a seed phrase that you have to memorize. It can be anywhere from like 8 to 25 words. If you have Bitcoin, the current software that I use, it's a lightweight wallet called Electrum. It allows you to generate 12 seed phrases, but you can add more to it, of course, to make it more secure. But as long as you memorize and have those available, those 12 seed phrases, if you ever lose custody of that wallet where all your cryptocurrency is stored, you can recover it at a future point in time. So
if he had a bunch of Bitcoin stored up, and he had it in wallets that weren't recovered, what can he do, Tim?
Yeah, and I don't know for sure, like, if he has these available. This is just conjecture right now. But now that he's out, all he has to do is go to any computer, go to any wallet software, put those seed phrases in for those wallets the U.S. government doesn't have for those funds. He now has tons and tons of Bitcoin from Silk Road. And Silk Road...
Which Bitcoin has gone up in value?
Oh, dude. Yeah, back then it was like thousands of dollars. Now it's hundreds of thousands, right? Because it's over, I think when I looked at it, it was at 104,000. So I don't know what it is currently. We could pull it up. But yeah, if he were to have any wallets that weren't on his computer that he just memorized or on his phone that was encrypted, totally could have hundreds of thousands of dollars right now. Who was it that donated? Somebody actually donated money to him, by the way, $111,111. I need to look that up. Who did that? He's receiving an immense outpouring of support, especially from libertarians who believe that government shouldn't have any involvement in our lives at all, to people who want to use the dark web and make it a safe place for everyone, because a large part of these darknet marketplaces is self-harm reduction, meaning that they do want you to be able to do whatever you want with your body, but not damage it ultimately or kill yourself. So there are certain drugs that are laced with fentanyl, which can kill a human being instantly depending on the potency of it.
This is a fun tangent.
Yeah, exactly. And then also people who just want to procure things for themselves.
So the moral of this is crime can pay, and you can get pardoned. And if you hide your Bitcoin appropriately and you remember your 12-word seed phrase after going to jail for 11 years, you can have potentially a significant nest egg to fall back on.
Potentially. Yeah, for sure. So what does this mean, like, going forward? I think it sets an unusual precedent for darknet market place admins that get arrested. For example, one of the more recent ones that was arrested in the United States is Pharaoh, who ran Incognito Marketplace on the dark web. That individual was arrested at John F. Kennedy Airport by the FBI. Well, I don't know. Well, maybe the FBI. Definitely federal law enforcement. And he was a South Korean citizen. And what does that mean for him being over here right now? Because he was running a darknet marketplace, will he be pardoned? Will that be a part of politics going forward? He also ran an exit scam. Like, a lot of dark web users hated him because he shut down his marketplace and sold people's Bitcoin. Well, I think he was using Monero on Incognito. So it's a very interesting time right now.
Case study for people who run dark web marketplaces. As long as they're not actively, and I use that in quotation marks, engaged in the criminal activity.
So super interesting stuff for Olbert being pardoned now out of jail.
All right. So that is this episode's news segment where we've talked about some fun dark web stuff. We've talked a little bit about Bitcoin. We didn't really dive into the nitty gritty, but this is also the first episode. If you guys want to hear more or you want us to talk more about blockchain technology and Bitcoin and e-wallets and stuff like that on the dark web, let us know. And that's something we can absolutely dive into in a future episode. The next thing we want to talk about is getting started with OSINT. And one of the very basic fundamentals of OSINT, like I talked about how I got started, was someone stole $40 from me, and that was unacceptable. Which I got the money back from the bank, couldn't get the other guy, but it led me down a thought process and a path that eventually led me into becoming certified as an OSINT instructor, something I use every day in my job now as a senior OSINT analyst for my company in support of various agencies. So the very basic part of OSINT is understanding the internet. So, Tim, what is the internet?
Before we get into the internet, let's talk about like open source intelligence in general. I think we said OSINT so many times that people don't really know what that means after doing their job.
All right, I'll start that over. So, Tim, what is open source intelligence?
So the definition that we have, because both Chris and I are recording this in the United States, the definition that we have in the United States, and I'll pull it up right now. If you guys want to look it up, here it is. Public Law 109-163, which is the National Defense Authorization Details. And it actually defines OSINT.
Open source intelligence
is intelligence that is produced from publicly available information and is collected, exploited, and disseminated in a timely manner to an appropriate audience for the purpose of addressing a specific intelligence requirement. So in the States, the House chose to define OSINT as that.
That is open source intelligence for the government. What is it for not the government?
That's a good question. Right. When you say that you conduct OSINT as an individual, whether you work for law enforcement, you're a private investigator, you work for the financial sector, right? What does that mean to you? And I think at the core of it is when we look at the definition from those, and then also what we're doing every single day is it has to be publicly available. And then also when we talk about OSINTs, so gathering publicly available information. And then also as a deliverable, it has to be a product, right? So we collect information that's publicly available and then we provide it to a customer. So I think at the core of it, OSINT is finding publicly available information that answers somebody's requirement.
All right. So you're finding information on the internet. You can pay for it.
And again, the internet is like probably 85% of what OSINT analysts do, right? Because if we think about going out and like casing a place, if you have to like actually for some things like OSINT is talking to people as well, going to conferences, librarians are a great sort of folks.
Google Street View. You don't have to case any joint. You just drop that little dude on there and then you can look around. Yeah. So, I mean, the core and the crux of open source intelligence is just using the internet. It's being curious. It's searching for things. Frequently, the first stop is Google because of how monstrous it is and how good it is at returning results.
If you care about your privacy, there are privacy search engines.
Well, that's for another time, Tim. And then you use your search results as your new search string, and then you get deeper into the rabbit hole to find out what it is. So someone asks you a question, and you find the answer using the internet. There are ways to protect yourself online when you're doing this. There are ways to minimize someone else's view, like a webmaster, of what you're trying to find, of what information you're looking for. And that's something we'll cover in the future as well. But yeah, so the core of it is finding stuff on the internet, collecting it. And so OSINT analysts, they're not, for the most part, they don't start as analysts. They start as collectors. You're on the internet and you're collecting information to answer a question. I had a colleague when I was talking to him about the starting of this podcast who asked me what the difference was between OSINT tracking and stalking. And I said that the difference is the purpose. So stalking, you're fine.
Intent is a huge. What is your intent right now? Is it to ultimately infringe on this person's privacy and civil liberties, right? Or is it to find that information that will help out your client? Two drastically different things.
It's a good time for a disclaimer. We do not encourage stalking. While some of the techniques that we'll tell you can allow you to do that in a personally protective way, that is not the purpose of this. The purpose of this is to talk about something that we're both passionate about and teach people who want to get into this field or who are already in this field and just want to learn more. And with us saying that, that doesn't mean we have all the answers, because we certainly don't. We're practiced at it. But if you guys, like, if anyone who knows what we're talking about or what they're talking about highlights something that we say incorrectly, let us know, and we'll make that admission.
Yeah. So when it comes to, like, in general, where do we get where we're at right now when it comes to open source intelligence? I think it's always been around, right? I think OSINT as a term is kind of relatively new, but I mean, we've been practicing every PAI collection.
Do you want to know how it started? At least from the government standpoint?
We can look at it from the U.S. government standpoint.
All right.
It's memorized.
All right. So the government decided, God, and I forget the year, but they wanted to know what was happening in other countries and how they received information about what the U.S. was doing. So someone had the bright idea to go, hey, let's look at newspapers. Let's see what local newspapers are saying. So they went out and through covert means bought all of these newspapers from different, countries, different newsstands, different news organizations, and brought all that stuff back, which took forever. And then went through all the newspapers and went, this is OSINT. This is how we get started, right? They didn't use those terms, but it's how, for the U.S. government, OSINT, open source intelligence, started. So they gathered all these newspapers, and then eventually someone went, hey, let's just make a database for this. So then someone created a database for newspapers. So then when newspapers came out, people uploaded them to ARPANET, which is going back just a little bit for our younger guys. If you weren't alive before the internet was born.
He said ARPANET, not internet. We've already lost all of our listeners.
So they started uploading these things to ARPANET, and it became a news database, which was the original database for open source intelligence for the United States government. Maybe. I might be wrong on some of those dates.
For ARPANET, it was actually an interconnected series of computers that started in the United States.
Yeah, right? It started for colleges and universities to share information.
Yeah, and those databases are still online, by the way. When we talk about these databases, we're not talking about, like, ticker tapes that go into there. These are actually like radio, what are they called? Like ribbons, like magnetic tape, right? That are still spinning to this day at Stanford, out west, I think at UCLA as
UCLA, yep.
Yeah, these databases are still there talking to each other that you can access today. So that's how long, I think it was like late 70s when all this stuff got started. And also, like, going back even further than that, not just newspapers, we're talking about like radio as well. We get into television broadcasts, people on the streets talking about the news, like town criers.
Newspaper is older than radio and the internet.
Medium is older than transmission medium, but yeah, just beyond that, it's like it's radio as well.
Yeah, but some government official wanted to read newspapers of different countries, and that was and I'll say widely considered, but it may not be widely. I'll say nichely considered as the birth of open source intelligence in support of the U.S. government.
And now, since we've kind of hit on the internet a lot, what about it? How can we define it? By the
So
way,
I think Shrek defined it really well.
do we have?
It's
like an onion?
it's just like an onion. It's got layers.
It's funny when we talk about onions because we get in the dark web in a later episode.
But for the internet in general, right? The basis of it is it's an interconnected series of devices. And those devices, right, can talk to each other. But there are varying levels of that, right? So the layers. So what are the primary layers that we're kind of trying to get at, right?
All right. So we have the clear net
Which is the product.
of everything you can hit with a web crawler. Essentially, yeah.
Perfectly.
Yeah. Yeah. So surface web. So when you go into Google and you type in pancake recipe, it's going to go out. They have a web crawler that's going to go out and click a bunch of links that say pancake, let's say recipe, and it's going to bring those results back to you and give you the one that says pancake recipe next to itself, right? That's what a web crawler does. It just goes out and it crawls the web.
And like it's trying to find all its index information in Google as a database, right? Even though Google's an database, right? It's an index like server, like storage device full of
So when you're using Google, you're not using the live internet?
Technically, no, you're not, because like Google's already actually done its job. These web crawlers have already went to these websites, found information on these, and then index it on their servers.
And it's waiting for you to type something in.
Exactly. It's not like search engines
to bring you back a non-static page or a static page.
Yeah. So like Google goes out, finds things, and then waits for someone to tell it, hey, go find this for me. And then once it's already available, it finds. And if it's not available, then...
Is that how they give you the result time? The 0.27 seconds? We've given you 7 million results in 0.27 seconds.
I haven't saw that in a while, honestly, because I've been looking at it. But yeah, it's like how long it took Google to search its data stores, its indexed information, to return results. So it's like, hey, from all the things that we've already collected, we found 20 million pages, right? 20 million results, and we found it in less than a second. That was like a huge marketing technique that Google did early in the day.
So that's the ClearNet. That's a web crawler going out and just finding all that information, bringing it back to a server farm, and then you're searching that server farm, and it's bringing you those results. And then you can click on those results and go to whatever web page has been created.
Yeah, the surface web.
Yeah. All right. So we have the surface, and then we have the deep net.
Deep web.
Deep web.
Yeah.
Again, I'm a Luddite.
So we're talking about this like just to differentiate. The ClearNet is anything that doesn't require a specialized software to access
or login.
No, well, no. Actually, the ClearNet can be with logins as well. So the ClearNet is anything you can access with a like regular conventional browser.
Yes.
So like Google Chrome, Edge.
But you're not necessarily logging into this.
Yeah, but the ClearNet is still, the deep web is still part of the clear web.
Yes.
The deep web is anything that requires you to authenticate access. It's like you have to have a specialized credential, or you have to have a login.
And you have to be active with it as well. The ClearNet, yeah, you're typing something into a search bar, but it's passive. It's Google's indexed all this stuff. You're not reaching out to all these places, so it's passive information.
Yeah, if you're just using search engines. Yeah, for sure.
All right, so keep going.
Deep web. Yeah, deep web. Anything you have to log into, essentially. So I think streaming services, your banking account, maybe your employer's intranets, right? That's all.
If you have an account with your public library.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. Like library content can actually be considered open source for all of that stuff. You can go up and ask for someone's account if you have the right authorizations. Like they get subpoenaed all the time. Where it's like, we know this person had an account here. What books do they check out?
At home. I'm not going to tell everybody, but yeah, I know how to do it.
I know how to make a napalm.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And again, things we've learned from reading books.
You could You can find all of this and more on the internet.
And then the last one that we're kind of getting into right now, because we're going dark, is the dark web.
I'm going to limit you to 5 minutes on the dark net.
He knows we'll keep talking. So when it comes to the dark web, there are multiple dark nets, right? So the dark web requires you to download software or have specialized encryption to access that content. And some of those actually have proxying services so you can access ClearNet content. So if you want to go to a website that is otherwise denied in your region, you can use a dark web connection, which is what a lot of countries around the globe actually use.
China.
Yeah, China, Russia, Iran.
The netizens of China, which is an entire younger group of population, they've been given this term, essentially similar to millennial and generational names that we use over here. China has designated a lot of their younger population as netizens, which are people who have grown up entirely online, and they keep finding ways around the strict or the Great Chinese Firewall.
Yeah, I've also heard it called digital natives.
Yes, yeah.
Right,
Well, in China, they're specifically called the netizens.
the netizens. What's the Cantonese Mandarin pronunciation?
I think it's netizens.
The netizens. But yeah, so when it comes to dark web content, you just have to have the software encryption available so you can access it. A very popular darknet that is available to anyone to download if you go to the website torproject.org.
Go Navy.
Yep. Yeah, the Naval Research Laboratory actually developed it and then later on joined by MIT researchers and then released a stable browser for it. It's built on Firefox in 2008. It's the Tor browser. So you can go to torproject.org, download it, and it acts just like a regular browser.
Why did the Navy make the darknet and the Tor browser widely available?
So initially the code was released in like 2000 and I want to say 2. It took a few years for them to develop a browser that's available for everyone. But they developed it so they could talk clandestinely to their operatives and spies.
Right.
So people in other countries, it was a network protocol that was set up where it was very difficult to decrypt the information that was going from point A to point B. Because Tor, as it works right now, is you have 3 separate connections that you go to before you connect to whomever you're going to. And if you have Tor installed on the other end as well, they get their own 3 separate connections. So imagine this, right? If you wanted to find out a piece of information, you wouldn't have to go to that one individual who knew about it. You'd have to go to 3 other people to find out about it. And that's how Tor works. And you could set up on the other end as well, where you'd have to go to 3 additional people, and then they don't really meet up. So Tor is designed as a way to obfuscate who you are, your internet activity.
Your originating address.
Yeah, and it's very difficult to determine that on the tail end if you're accessing a website. And then also like maintain your privacy, which is what Tor has always been about. Their tagline is privacy is not an option. So
Yeah. So that's the internet.
Thanks everyone for tuning into the OSINT Output hosted by Chris and Tim. Tune in next week where we talk more about searching the internet with web browsers and also some more news.